Hey guys, so this whole thing, it's just wow. It's like my whole world flipped upside down. It's not just the am I not good enough, or what did I do wrong, or why doesn't she love me? It's like the entire foundation of our relationship has been shaken. And now everything we did, every conversation, every business deal with Jeff, it all has a completely different meaning. Like maybe it wasn't as simple as I thought it was. Maybe there was this whole storm brewing that I had no clue about. I've got this feeling that Jemima knows something. I just feel it in my gut. Maybe that's why she's been MIA for months. Maybe she discovered the whole Jeff and Monica thing, and she just couldn't bring herself to tell me. But, hold on a second, why is she in New York with Monica? Monica used her phone, so Jemima has to be there. And during all this, the biggest question that keeps popping up in my head is why? I know I need to hear it from the horse's mouth to understand. But right now I can't trust anyone. It doesn't matter what they say, because my trust is gone, buried under this massive pile of lies. My phone's been blowing up. Jeff, Monica, her phone finally came back to life right where it should be. Jemima's calling, too. Even Maury left a message. The only thing I know for sure is that there's no way I'm working with Jeff anymore. Partners, over. The company, maybe I'll dissolve it, or even go on TV and expose him for the fraud he is. Nothing left to hide anymore? I'm going to meet with a lawyer first to see what my legal options are. But one thing's clear, Jeff's not going to get away with this without paying the price. It sucks that the people we trust the most are often the ones who hurt us the most when they betray us. I found a divorce lawyer. He specializes in family law, not business, so I'll need to find someone else for the rest of this mess. I drank 4 whiskeys and passed out, waiting for Monica to come back in a few days. She'll be back home, and I'm ready to leave. After my lawyer meeting tomorrow, I'm heading back to the reservation, where people are real, not fake. The next morning, after a sleepless night, I ignored all the calls and met with the divorce lawyer. I showed him the prenup, told him everything I knew, and he promised to get the divorce papers rolling. He said I need to know the whole truth and that I have to confront Jeff and Monica. Ugh, it's so hard to even think about that, but I know I have to. After that, I packed a bag, booked a last-minute flight, left my phone on the kitchen counter, and called my parents to let them know I'm coming home. I grabbed an old burner phone for emergencies and took off, hoping the reservation would be the place I could finally find some peace. As soon as I checked in, I felt this huge wave of relief wash over me. Finally, I was surrounded by people who don't judge, who don't lie. With my parents, my brother, and his family, I found exactly what I needed, serenity and no questions asked. It took a while for me to be able to tell them everything. It was all so chaotic. Just trying to process it all was a struggle. But I knew that here, in the warmth of my family, I could finally share my bottled-up anger, confusion, and pain without fear of judgment. There's something magical about letting your guard down with the people you love. Native American culture has a really different way of listening and respecting each other's feelings. They value seeing the person behind the words, respecting everyone's individuality and where their emotions come from. When you're real, when you don't hide anything, they accept and appreciate that, because being true to yourself is something they value most. We talked a lot, and my family didn't hold back on the tough questions. My brother, for example, just came out and asked, "Is her abortion the worst thing she could have done?" That one really hit home. Honestly, if she had told me she was pregnant with Jeff's kid, I probably would have suggested an abortion, too. But she just did it without even asking me, without including me in the decision. I've never felt so disrespected in my life. Then came the question, do you even want to know? And the truth is, yeah, I really do want to know the truth about my business partner destroying my marriage. It's kind of hard not to want to know that, right? We ended up talking about respect, or more accurately, the lack of respect she showed me. You can't sleep with your husband's business partner and still have even the slightest amount of respect for your spouse. How do you do that and call it okay? The fact is, that act alone showed that she completely lost any respect she had for me. The family kept asking questions about her emotions, and I found myself wondering, what drove her to betray me like this? Why choose Jeff? Does she really want him? And what about Jemima? What does she know? And how does she feel about being with Monica during all this? Is she really there to support Monica, or is there something else going on? These thoughts kept swirling in my head, reminding me that I need to have a serious conversation with Jemima. I've come to understand that our marriage is over because for whatever reason, other than saving humanity, the lack of respect she showed me is something I can't overlook, and she knows it. I gave up the biggest thing a man can give up to be with her. And she took that gift and smashed it to the ground. And we both know it. The house is mine. That's stated in the prenup. It was mine before we even got married. It's paid off. Thank you, clonkers. And it's 100% mine. I wouldn't be surprised if she tries to move out while I'm gone. Either way, a reckoning needs to happen so I can close this chapter and move on. While I'm sure I still love the woman I thought was my wife, this woman isn't her. She looks like her, and she does things like her, but she wasn't her when it mattered. I'm not sure if she ever really was, or if it was just my own needs and desires that blinded me. The thing is, I'm not blinded by rage. It's weird, I don't even understand why I'm not. I know I should be furious, like don't push me, you won't like me when I'm angry. But instead of wanting to smash things, I just feel this deep sadness, and a ton of questions keep circling in my head. What did I do wrong? What did she need that I couldn't give her? Am I not good enough for her? It's 1,000 questions, but no real anger. One night, we sat down to talk about everything, and they were saying how I still hadn't really processed what happened. My sister-in-law thinks I'm just not letting the impact sink in yet, and I guess she could be right. My brother, being the sarcastic jerk he always is, said that maybe I'm just emotionally stunted and this whole thing isn't hitting me the normal way it does for other people. I should mention he was pretty drunk at this point, so it was half joking. I retorted, if you want to hear jokes, I'm the one who delivers them, that's my job, and ended it with a cold, sarcastic sneer. My parents had a different take. My dad thinks maybe I'm compartmentalizing my emotions to avoid the pain. My mom thinks I'm the most mature person in the family, knowing how to keep my head and manage my emotions instead of letting them control me. But there's one thing no one realized, I'm just numb. I don't feel anything anymore, just the surface emotions I can't avoid. When I explained this, my mom got really worried. She's scared that if the shock really hits me, I won't be here with the family to support me. But I know I need to get back to Chicago. I need to face reality and figure out what comes next. I need more information. I need closure. My 5 days with the family were supposed to give me the strength to deal with everything coming my way. But like always, man plans, and the gods laugh. Here, in the arms of the people I know only want me to be myself, I've been comforted, but it hasn't really clarified my future, other than the certainty that no more Monica. Then one afternoon, as I was sitting with the family, the burner phone vibrated. Someone from Chicago had tracked me down and probably found out I was using this number. I just sat there, staring at the screen, wondering if I should answer. It couldn't be Jemima or Monica. They don't have this number. That leaves Jeff or Maury. I also wondered, could Jeff have given Monica this number? Finally, I looked at the screen to see who it was. It was Maury. And I answered on impulse. Ben? Maury's voice came through. Who else would you expect? I snapped, a little annoyed by the redundant question. Sorry. Of course, he stuttered. Look, I don't know what happened, but Jeff's been freaking out looking for you everywhere, and I've been getting calls from Monica every few hours to see if you've contacted her. Where are you? I'm on the reservation, I said, deciding not to hide it anymore. It doesn't matter if they know where I am now. I'm coming back to Chicago in a few days. I'll be back in a couple of days. We'll meet up, talk about the future, or the lack of future. Who knows? Maury sighed heavily. There was a brief silence before he said softly, I guess this is too good to be true. Hey, can you give me a little background on what's going on? All I know is that Jeff said something happened, that you were really upset, and Monica's been going crazy trying to find you. Did you guys have a fight or something? I decided not to hold back the truth from Maury. He'll find out soon enough when I decide to end things with Jeff. Jeff got Monica pregnant, and she ran off to New York to get an abortion. I had no idea about any of this, I said directly, not avoiding the truth. There was a pause, then a quiet. Jesus Christ came from the other end of the line. Look, I don't know what I'm going to do, Maury, but you can believe this isn't going to end well. Our partnership is definitely over. I can assure you of that. Jeff's not going to get away with this easy, I promise you. Ben, Maury replied, slowly, like he was carefully choosing his words. Don't act in anger. I don't let impulsiveness destroy everything you've built over the years. Really think this through, you know? I knew that was Maury's advice. He's not just concerned about me, his career is tied to our partnership. Jeff can't write scripts without me. And Maury's been getting 20% of the profits from all our work for years. Our split would affect him and our 3 remaining clients. But I have to admit, his advice wasn't completely off base. Maybe I should think things through before I act, because I want any action I take to be intentional. Honestly, Maury, I don't even know what I'm going to do next. Divorce from Monica is a no-brainer, but as for Jeff, partnership dissolution is probably the next step. I'm not working with him anymore, not helping him directly or indirectly. You gonna blame me for that? I said, a little bitterly. I'm not planning on going public with everything, unless Jeff forces my hand. Then he'll have to deal with the public backlash, but that's his choice. Maury sighed, this time sounding a little more relieved. I'm really sorry this happened, Ben. You don't deserve this. Don't worry, I'll keep it under wraps as much as possible. That's also my job. But will you meet with me when you get back, so we can figure out how to handle this disaster? Sure, I'll make time. But maybe not right away. First, I need to talk to a lawyer about my business side of things. You understand? Yeah, he replied, sounding a little tense. He was silent for a moment, then said, like he just thought of something, should I tell Jeff that I spoke to you? He's your client too, right? I think you're obligated to let him know. You're my client too. This is a tough one, Maury muttered, then sighed again. What a mess. All because he couldn't keep his pants on. God knows what Jem's thinking right now. I shrugged, then remembered he can't see me. As for Jem, I still can't wrap my head around it. My family and I have been speculating about her motivations, but in the end, no explanation really makes sense. Talk to you later, Maury, I said, then added, and if Monica asks, I don't have this number, okay? Jeff or Jem either. Got it, he replied. Stay safe, Ben. I know this is a tough time, but life will go on after all this. I'll see you when you're back. After that call, I spent the rest of the day sitting in the back garden, sipping hot tea and bourbon, alternating between sips, never mixing them, of course. I'm a Native American, not a savage. I just sat there, wondering why I wasn't more angry. Instead, I was almost numb. No rage, no searing pain. I loved Monica with everything I had, and it still wasn't enough. So why wasn't I more hurt? I just sat there, my mind blank, trying to imagine even a sliver of a future. Normally I'd be screaming, breaking stuff, letting the anger rip through me. I'd be drowning myself in booze, asking everyone around me why. Why is this happening? But no, I did nothing. There were flashes of emotion, then they'd fade away, like I was just watching a scene from some random movie, nothing really to do with me. Instead of blowing up, I was trying to rationalize, analyze, figure out how to get out of this mess without losing control even once. My family noticed. They thought I was too calm, even cold. My brother even said that if I really loved Monica, I wouldn't be sitting here like this. The truth is, I was spending my time calmly figuring out what was going to happen next, where she would live, how I'd move her stuff out, what I was going to do about Jeff professionally, and how the divorce process would go. Jeff would have to face consequences, but the funny thing is, I didn't even care. I just felt like I needed to do what needed to be done, plain and simple. Everything was like a list of tasks to complete, one at a time, nothing more. My mom, with her uncanny insight, made a comment that stopped me in my tracks. She said, "The dam is broken, but there's something still stuck there. And when it breaks free, it's going to come crashing down. Water can't stay there forever. And when that happens, Ben, you come back. You're going to need us." My mom isn't the philosophical type, but her words felt so deep, like she could see right into me. Even though I didn't feel anything specific at that moment, I knew she was probably right. I was like a bomb waiting to explode. But instead of freaking out about it, I chose to ignore it, focus on getting back to Chicago, getting on with my life, trying to imagine what I'd do with my future, both professionally and personally. When I got back home, everything was eerily peaceful. No Monica lurking around or camping out in front of my door like I'd imagined. Not a knock on the door in 3 days while I was out shopping, reorganizing things, and checking in with my family lawyer to see how the divorce paperwork was coming along. The lawyer had prepped several versions of the divorce papers, but advised me to meet with Monica at least once before I decided to file, just to think it through. I even scoffed, like she was going to give me the real story. But maybe she would say something. Who knows? At this point, I was reevaluating all my beliefs about her, everything I thought was solid. A few days later, I had an appointment with the Pearson firm. Jessica Pearson came in person for the initial meeting, And let me tell you, that woman is a terrifying embodiment of cool and decisive. If people thought I was calm, I was just a gentle breeze compared to the impenetrable fortress that is Jessica Pearson. I handed them an old contract Jeff and I had signed years ago, along with our Netflix deals and other agreements. They said they'd take a look, and we'd meet again to discuss options. We scheduled a meeting 2 days later, and I walked out of their office feeling empty, unsure if there was anything else I could do. So I went home, sat in my room, staring at the wall, not thinking about anything, just lost in a silent void. Day 3 rolled around, and as predicted, Monica came. The surprise was that she wasn't alone. Jemima was with her. I should have known, but somehow, seeing them standing at my door still shocked me. The doorbell rang, and my phone buzzed with a door notification at the same time. I flipped on the video feed, and there they were, Monica and Jemima. Monica didn't even try to use the code or fingerprint lock. She must have known I'd disabled it. Monica always understood me. She knew I'd erase my lock as soon as I found out. But this brought up another question. She knew exactly how I'd react, so why do it in the first place? I got up, took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. If there was ever a time I might lose control, it would be in the next few minutes, when, or if, I finally got some answers. I opened the door, and the first thing I saw was Monica's haggard, weary face. She looked pale and drained, her eyes heavy with sadness. She knew, I knew, we both knew this was the end. Jemima stood quietly beside her, her expression tense, trying to appear composed, but clearly unable to hide her anxiety. It was the look of someone who knew what they were about to do was going to hurt, but had no other choice. Monica looked at me wearily, taking a step inside as I silently turned and headed towards the living room, leaving the door open for them to follow. I sank into an armchair, facing the window overlooking the street. Monica sat on the love seat beside me, while Jemima perched on the edge of the sofa, keeping a respectful distance, as if she wanted to stay on the sidelines, leaving space for Monica and me to face each other. I stared at Monica, waiting. She hung her head, her hands clasped together, clearly unsure what to do or say. Finally, she whispered, "I'm sorry, Ben. I'm so sorry. I don't know how to say it so you'll understand that I'm sorry." "It's mine, isn't it?" I interrupted, cutting to the chase. No need for her pathetic apologies. Words meant nothing to me at this point. Monica sighed, glancing at Jemima hesitantly, then back at me. "No, it's not yours. If it were, I would never do what I did." I nodded, letting out a breath I didn't realize I was holding. "So, it's Jeff, I guess?" He admitted it. She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. She didn't wipe them away, just sat there, silent. "We did a prenatal test as soon as I was sure I was pregnant. I had to be sure. If it had been yours, things would have been different then. I would never have. But when it wasn't yours, there was no other choice." At least she was certain it wasn't mine before she made the decision. And it seemed like Jeff was the only other person she'd been involved with. But I still didn't understand why. I thought we had a good marriage. She didn't need Jeff. So where had I gone wrong? I turned to Jemima. She looked at me, her face tense and confused, clearly flustered, unsure of what to do. "And you? What's your role in all this? I expected you to be furious with my wife, your husband after all. She's pregnant with his kid." Jemima looked at me, her mouth opening and closing, unable to speak. She quickly glanced at Monica, her eyes full of terror, then back at me, looking almost scared to the point of shrinking back. Suddenly, everything became much clearer. "You knew, didn't you?" I exploded. "You knew my wife was sleeping with your husband, and you just accepted it. You allowed it to happen." The question suddenly explained everything. Why had Jemima stopped coming around, disappeared for weeks? She knew Monica and Jeff were spending time together, and for some reason she chose to ignore it, not stop it. Maybe because she had her own plans. Monica looked at me with a sad expression, her voice low. "No, I took something from you. You don't have your faithful wife anymore. What I got because of you. I know that, Ben. I'm not completely stupid." But stupid enough to get pregnant with Jeff's kid? I blurted out before I could think. And now looking back, I realized I wasn't wrong at all. Monica just nodded. Jeff was a mistake. He found out about us one night. He came home unexpectedly, and he wasn't happy. Not happy at all. I'm sure you can imagine. Oh, I could imagine. And I could script what happened next, now that I had the full picture. He lost control, Monica began, her voice shaky. The only way we could think to keep him quiet was to bring him in. Just occasionally. And the pregnancy, it just happened. No plan. Bad timing, I guess, or maybe a condom broke. I don't know. It happened, Ben. I'm really sorry. She looked down, her voice choked. As soon as I realized, I knew I had to deal with it. There was no way I could carry his child, no way to let it exist inside me for even a second longer. I didn't miss the word we. So, this whole thing was a joint effort between her and Jeff. But still, Jeff definitely wasn't going to get away with this. Monica looked up, her eyes brimming with tears, continuing. If it had been yours, I would have carried it with all my love. But it's his, nothing can change that. I'm sorry, Ben. She hung her head, the tears starting to fall. Anyone else? I blurted out, my voice louder than I intended. How many other guys don't I know about? Deep down, I felt like this was probably just her and Jeff. But if someone had told me this would happen, I wouldn't have believed them. I stared at Monica, waiting for her answer. No one else, Ben, she said, surprised by the suspicion in my voice. Just Jeff, I swear. I know you wanted to have a child, she continued, her voice pleading. You gave that up for me. I know that. Maybe we can raise it together. I know you would be a great dad. We. I emphasized the word, unable to believe what I was hearing. She looked at me, her eyes lighting up slightly, like someone grasping at a last hope. Yes, she whispered, we can do this together. I love you, Ben. I laughed, feeling nothing but sarcasm. I got a vasectomy, Monica. You know that. My voice went cold. But you can get it reversed, right? She said, her voice pleading. People do it all the time. I know that. We can get through this. Together. Together with who? I retorted, my gaze shifting from Monica to Jemima, then back to her. God, Monica, do you want me to believe this? That Jemima is your partner? The person you lean on? Ben, please don't make her leave you. She's all I have right now. Jemima has been there for me, helping me. I nearly scoffed. She's been supporting you. She's the one who started all of this. She's the reason I'm dealing with this mess. Her and Jeff. All of this is their doing. Monica nodded slightly, her voice choked. I know, Ben. I know you don't deserve any of this. But we've gone too far. I love Jemima and I love you. I had Jeff, but it was nothing like what you and I had. We got pregnant, and then we had to deal with it. And now I'm being honest with you, hoping for your forgiveness. Hoping that you'll be better than me. The anger inside me was close to overwhelming. My mom warned me, and now I understood her words. All the suppressed emotions, all the pain, the bitterness, the betrayal, it was like a tidal wave ready to crash over me. Where are you now? I asked, ignoring her pleas. Are you still with Jeff, or have you moved in with your little girlfriend? Monica shook her head, answering immediately. No, I haven't even looked at him since. He blackmailed us with this, forced us to keep going. He doesn't have anything to hold me to anymore. He can't do anything to me. I snorted, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Blackmail? He didn't have to blackmail you at all. You handed it to him on a silver platter, just because you were afraid I'd find out. You just made your debt of guilt heavier. Monica shuddered, letting out a long sigh. I was desperate, Ben, can't you see? So why were you so desperate, Monica? I asked, my voice softening after the anger, maybe letting her explain. No more hints. She looked down at her hands, hesitating. You didn't want me to know, this way. You wanted to control the story. To tell me calmly, so I could understand that you're still my man, the only one I can rely on. I looked at her, seeing the lies in her every word. Do you really want me to believe that? That you weren't trying to hide this? That you didn't want me to know? It's like you're writing a script for me to believe. Monica swallowed hard, her eyes looking anxiously at Jemima. It's not like that. Jems and I have been thinking about this for hours, Ben. We've been agonizing over how to tell you. How to tell you without hurting you. You don't deserve any of this. You mean too much to me. Oh, really? I asked, my voice dripping with cynicism. Tell me the truth, Monica. How were you going to tell me? She was silent, a flicker of confusion crossing her face. What? You said you had this whole plan, I said, my voice cold. So tell me, what exactly was your plan? Monica glanced at Jemima, her eyes lost. Jemima nodded, silently urging her to speak. One of the ideas was we'd have this little get-together, some drinks, relax. Monica started, slowly, like she was feeling her way through the dark. Then we'd kind of get things going and lead to this little performance between me and Jeff. I'd feel more comfortable then, and then, who knows? We could have a threesome with you with Jeff and things would eventually settle down in a way that wouldn't make you feel threatened. I snorted, unable to believe what I was hearing. So you were planning to expose your affair by taking advantage of me and using my desire to do something dirty for you instead? Monica flushed. No, I didn't think it was that bad. But in a way, yes. But you never went through with it, did you? I asked bluntly. I determined that they had considered it, but never actually done it. Monica nodded, but then she looked down, silent. And then you got pregnant. And didn't tell me, I said, my voice as cold as it could get. I felt like I was walking through a desolate wasteland of calm that only people who had gone through the ultimate rage could reach. Silence. A few minutes ticked by in the heavy air before I asked, where are you staying? Monica hesitated, then admitted, Jemima has a condo downtown. She bought it when she started dating Jeff, as an investment. We're there. I turned my icy gaze towards Jemima, who had been sitting silently, not saying a word. So Jemima, what do you think Jeff's reaction would be to all this being performed the way you wanted? Jemima shifted uncomfortably, her eyes darting toward Monica as if begging for help. Don't look at her. Answer me, I said, losing patience. She bit her lip, finally blurting out, Jeff is more easygoing than you are, less principled. Not as strict about, boundaries. So, you think he'd be okay with this? I asked, genuinely surprised. Jemima nodded, her voice flat. I think, as long as he believes I'm still 100% with him, that this is just a one-off thing, yeah, I think he'd accept it. I sat there, staring at her, stunned by their delusional state. Did she really think that Jeff would be cool with sharing her forever? Or that I would just sit back and watch? What was this? Some kind of unspoken agreement in their heads. He'd be cool with it, would he? I asked, dripping with sarcasm. Because he might think he's getting something better than me. Monica turned towards Jemima, shaking her head in disbelief, but Jemima stubbornly replied, he was. There was this time we were both together, and it was fine. Of course it was fine, I said dryly. He's got 2 women around him, why wouldn't it be? But it's not going to last. Do you really think this is a forever solution? This is just a temporary fix so he could keep you, Jemima. The whole thing will blow up as soon as Monica gets pregnant. And you guys thought it was going to work? I saw the blush and the shame in their eyes, but I continued. If you really think this is some long-term solution, you guys forgot he's just using you. He wants beautiful women around him and feels like he's better than everyone, but it's really just selfish love. Monica cut in, her voice trembling. Ben, you have to understand that it was an accident. The pregnancy wasn't planned. The moment I knew, I took care of it. There's never going to be a Jeff Jr. running around, you can be sure of that. Yeah, maybe he should use condoms, I said, emotionless. Monica sighed, almost desperately. We did. It just got out of control. I didn't think about the consequences. Because you were afraid the truth would come out. So, everything you did was just to cover it up for me, I replied, my voice flat. I was out of patience for any sympathy. I was tired. I had said everything I could, nothing left to discuss. Monica was like a broken record, repeating apologies that had no meaning anymore. All I wanted was for her to leave so I could sit with my pain alone, to have space to think about what to do next with my life. Just go, we're done. You know that, I said, my voice hoarse. I'm never going to be okay with sharing you with anyone. You inflicted a wound that can't be healed. Go live your life with Jemima. Ben, Monica began, her voice wavering, as if clinging to a last hope. Go, Monica. Go, just go. My voice cracked, my composure broken. I'll have my lawyers contact you. They'll handle the rest. I'm done. You didn't just destroy our marriage, you destroyed my career. Good job. Now get out, I roared. The anger and exhaustion overwhelmed me. I couldn't take it anymore. I needed her out of my sight. Monica stood up, her shoulders shaking. She looked at me, her eyes full of sadness, or at least I imagined that, because I wouldn't meet her gaze. Ben, no matter what happened, I still love you. Always will. You'll always be my man. And if you ever need anything at all, I'll be here. I'll never forgive myself for what I did, for the hurt I caused you. Her voice trembled, as if regret was pushing tears to the surface. I still wouldn't look at her, just gestured towards the door, emotionless. You're going to think there's something you did wrong. that you weren't good enough. But that's not true. You've always been enough, Ben. It was never your fault. It was me. I wasn't enough. You deserve more than any woman could want, and you have to believe that you do." Monica paused, her voice laced with regret. "I let this happen and tried to have it both ways, and now I'm paying the price, losing you, the man I love most. I just wish this wasn't your pain to bear. It's unfair, and I'm so sorry." She fell silent for a second, then added, "I'm sorry, Ben. I love you, and I wish you knew how much I loved you." I couldn't muster the courage to respond. What would I say at this point? The truth is, I didn't want her back. There was nothing left to salvage. And even if she paid the price, the one who was left alone was me. Then Monica turned and walked away from the living room. I heard the front door open, then close, like the final punctuation mark. Suddenly, it felt like a part of me died with that click of the lock. Life, as an English friend once told me, goes on. And it did, though for me, it felt twisted and warped. I knew I was hurting, but there was nothing I could do about it. I'd become a different person. My temperament changed. I was short and snappy with everyone. If anyone did something wrong, even just a little slip-up, I'd snap at them, even the barista at my coffee shop. All that easygoingness I once had seemed to disappear overnight. The news of our split spread quickly, though not in a way that everyone knew about Monica's pregnancy with Jeff's kid and the abortion, but enough for people to know we were over. Jeff was involved, and she was now with Gemma. I had no intention of letting everyone know the full story. That was personal. But the lack of any public interactions between me and Jeff, no new material from him, a few canceled shows, it all came together, and soon enough, the gossip mill started turning, spinning the story across entertainment blogs. After that last encounter with Monica and Jemima, I pretty much shut down, didn't want to go out for days. I reached out to Pearsons and Associates. They told me to come in to discuss next steps. Then, I called my family lawyer to go over the prenup. I'd prepped for this, and that contract was the only thing keeping me grounded. Monica wasn't going to walk away empty-handed, but she wasn't going to get half. The house was mine. She got about 20% of my income from the years we were together, enough for her to live comfortably without working, if she wanted. But I knew Monica, she wouldn't stop without doing something. She always had to prove herself, always had to be the one working and contributing. She didn't fight the divorce, didn't ask for counseling or want to reconcile. At least Monica understood that. For me, this was truly over. Maybe she had Jemima to comfort her. Whatever. I cut off all contact, blocked her number, deleted Instagram, email, everything. I did the same to Jeff. It took 6 months, but I was finally a free man. But freedom wasn't bringing me any joy. I barely had any friends left. Most of our mutual friends had sided with Monica, and the ones who stayed by me, I pushed away. Once, while having a beer with a friend at Hooters, he said that people were calling me Bitter Ben. And I realized he was right. I was becoming Bitter Ben. I was bitter, angry. The anger was always simmering beneath the surface, just waiting to boil over. Sometimes I could see myself taking out my pain and anger on other people, but it seemed impossible to stop. Afterwards, I felt terrible, but in the moment, I couldn't stop myself. The one thing I didn't do, though, was blame myself. Monica's last words about it not being my fault, that I couldn't have prevented this, stayed with me, and somehow I believed it. But the bitterness didn't go away. I hadn't done anything wrong, and yet I was the one bearing all the consequences. I felt betrayed on a deep level. Monica hadn't just had an affair, she manipulated me, hid everything for months, and then destroyed everything, my love and my career. Sometimes I still loved her, just a tiny bit left over. People asked if she came back, ready to leave Jemima and make it up to me, if I would forgive her. I knew the answer. We'd still be getting a divorce. But it still gnawed at me. How could I have been so wrong about her? I gave her everything, and it still wasn't enough. Jeff tried to contact me several times. He even came to my house a few times, but I just sat there, watching him through the Ring camera. Those visits made me decide to call Mari, who was both relieved and not relieved to hear from me, kind of like Schrodinger's agent. "Mari?" I said. "Oh, Ben. Thank God you called. I've been freaking out. How are you?" Now everyone knew that Monica and I were getting a divorce, and that Jeff was somehow involved. Everyone was making up their own stories. "I'm fine. Listen, I need you to tell Jeff something, okay?" I said, my voice a little brusque. I was acting like that with everyone these days. What do you want me to say? Maury asked, hope flickering in his voice. Tell him that if he comes to my house again, I'm going to throw all his stuff out on the street. Tell him to leave me alone. There was silence on the other end of the line. You got that, Maury, I said dryly. Tell him he's lucky I haven't beat the crap out of him yet, and if he shows up again, I might just do it. I could hear Maury sigh before he answered, cautiously. Ben, I get it. You're angry and hurt. I'll pass the message along, but maybe we should also sit down and talk about where to go from here, you know? Not today or tomorrow, but soon. We should talk. There's a storm brewing, Maury. You might want to find a safe place or a bunker. Things aren't looking good, I replied. He was right, we needed to talk. But first I needed legal counsel. Ben, don't do anything rash, okay? Maury said, pleading. Talk to me first before you do anything. You and Jeff have worked together for years, built an amazing career. Don't throw that away right now. Please, just talk to me. I'll see you, Maury. I promise. I just need some time to process this, I answered. Okay, Ben. I understand. I'll relay your message. Take care, buddy, Maury replied, then hung up. Threatening Jeff by saying I would go public would probably work. He'd have to back off, his career was more important to him than anything. For a public figure, reputation is everything, and for a comedian like Jeff, it's even more crucial. Just ask Louis C.K. after his May 2 incident exploded, or John Mulaney after his public breakdown. A stain like this, Jeff getting his writing partner's wife pregnant, would be career-ending for him. And Jeff lived for his career. People would say, if I wanted to make Jeff pay, and I definitely did, why not just expose the whole thing? Simple. I didn't have hard evidence. It would be my word against his. And though I'm sure a lot of people would believe me, many wouldn't. Plus, if he sued me for libel, how would I defend myself? No, luckily, I had a better option, courtesy of Jessica Pearson and her associates. I gave Jessica's team the contract I had with Jeff, along with the other deals the company had signed. They meticulously went through every detail to understand exactly where I stood legally and financially. Of course, I was all for the idea of destroying the company and suing Jeff. But they advised patience to let them craft a strategy that would maximize my advantage. Strangely, while I hated Monica for what she did, it was Jeff I wanted to crush. My anger towards Monica was simmering, but I wasn't ready to really go after her yet. Not yet, anyway. A week later, Pearson called me into the office. I walked into their plush conference room, sipped on some of the best damn coffee I'd ever had, and sat across from 3 sharp lawyers who looked like sharks waiting to strike. The head honcho, whose eyes I swear looked red under the lights, started the meeting. All right, Mr. Blackcloud, we've gone through your contracts and finances, and we have a pretty clear picture of the company's situation as well as your and Mr. Klondike's legal standing, he said. The question is, how much do you want to make him hurt? I looked up, meeting their gaze. Finally, I said, I just want him to pay. For him to understand what it feels like to be betrayed. The head lawyer smiled, a sharp, cunning smile. Well then, he said, our advice is to do nothing. What? I shot up, disbelieving. That's right. Don't do anything. Leave everything exactly as it is in the contract. Let the company continue, but you don't contribute anymore. He smirked smugly. I stared at him, trying to decipher the meaning behind those words. Suddenly I understood, and the feeling made me want to laugh. Let me break it down for you, he continued, his finger tapping lightly on the table. The contract between you and Mr. Klondike, it's actually a pretty unique structure as we see it. It's modeled after a client-contractor agreement, but it has additional provisions for equity ownership. Basically, you two own all the company's intellectual property, regardless of how the income is divided. And that includes the TV show, he continued, a part we noticed you've never really claimed your share of the income for. I nodded. I had never considered claiming those outside income streams before. Our first recommendation is to pursue 40% of the show's income, he said, his smile widening. That number, based on its current value, could be millions of dollars. He'll either pay you or face a long and drawn-out legal battle that he's guaranteed to lose in public. It was a brilliant plan. The idea that I could get 40% of Jeff's current projects without doing any work was more appealing than ever. But to really make him suffer, he continued, we recommend you let the company exist, but don't contribute any further to its intellectual property. Any new material that Jeff creates you get 40% of without contributing a single word. So, you're saying, I muttered, suddenly realizing the full scope of the plan. Listen, the third vampire's voice chimed in, deep and full of implication. We're proposing that Mr. Klondike, if he wants to keep performing and selling merchandise, he gets 40% of the profits, whether or not you contribute to it in the future. In other words, we're paying you to relax. He smirked, a weird smile that revealed pointed fangs. Any new material he acquires and performs, you get 40% of any money made. It's a straightforward contract, nothing obligates you to do anything in the future, and whatever you earn, you get 40% of it. Oh, I like that, I replied. Very get paid to sit around forever. But a doubt crept into my mind. Can he close the company, wipe out the joint ownership? The third vampire chuckled, the sound like wind whistling through a window frame. Yes, Mr. Klondike can try, but the chances of him succeeding are basically zero. What would he do with the intellectual property he's already created? There are no regulations for that. The courts will force a split, and I shudder to think how they'll do it. Would he get half of the jokes, and I'd get the other half? Or would he keep the setup, and I'd get the punchline? Is that even how you structure a joke? He burst out laughing. Dividing ownership of a performance is even more complex. They'll have to split the profits, even worse than the 40-60 deal in this contract. Bands usually deal with this kind of stuff, and most music contracts have clauses for this kind of thing. It's all spelled out. Maybe our lawyer who was handling this stuff was inexperienced, because the only things clearly stated are ownership of existing assets and what's created after. Then the problem is joint ownership of the performance itself. If he or I decide to give up our use, what happens to all those DVDs that are out there? Can we sell our rights to them, or license the intellectual property, the jokes in this case, to someone else? Do they have monetary value? This is the kind of stuff that estate lawyers struggle with, and it often takes years of arguing, and all the lawyers get rich while everyone else doesn't. He laughed creepily, and I swear I could see fangs double in length, as if there was a second mouth hidden inside, like some kind of alien creature. The Hyena King Pearson's lead lawyer passed a thick document to me, a smug half-smile appearing on his face as he slid it across the table. Here, he said, this is the most compelling reason Mr. Klondike won't touch that contract between you two. It's the special Netflix deal you two signed. Actually, 2 deals with Netflix and 1 special with Sky TV, but they're all the same in terms of core content. All 3 give exclusive rights to his performance for 15 years, not just the content but the performance itself. If he breaks the deal with Jeff, meaning dissolving the company, Netflix loses their exclusive rights, because the party granting them those exclusive rights, you and Jeff's company, no longer exists. And unlike your deal with Jeff, they have all sorts of penalty clauses to ensure you'll pay dearly if that happens. I skimmed the pages of the document, but didn't really read. The allure wasn't in the words, but the crushing pressure Netflix could place on Jeff if he dared to touch this. Netflix could demand repayment of all the investment money they've put in, plus a 50% penalty on top of that, in compensation for any income loss they claim to incur when the show is removed from their platform. Netflix is free to estimate that number, and there would be no limit on the amount of damages they could seek from both you and Mr. Klondike. I sat there, my mouth almost wanting to laugh. Pearson continued. The bottom line here is, Jeff will be at a massive disadvantage if he tries to dissolve the company and the contract between the two of you. Meanwhile, you just sit back and get 40% of everything he makes in the future. There won't be much from any new shows because, as far as we understand, you are the one who created most of the content in the show. But whatever material he uses from before, you still own 50% of the rights and income. Plus, you'll get 40% of all profits from merchandise related to the show, if any. The Hyena King leaned back in his chair, a triumphant smile plastered on his face. I could almost picture him as a bat, just missing the wings. Like I said, he repeated, the best way to punish him is to do nothing. Let Jeff pay you. So, he can't start a new company and create a similar show? I asked, still curious. He can, Pearson said, his eyes glimmering with amusement. But he'll have to sign an amendment, giving up any rights to any new material he might create. But would you agree to that, Mr. Blackcloud? I smiled coldly. I don't think so. You're right, he said, his smile widening, revealing sharp teeth. I think you're smart enough not to do that. a thought struck me out of nowhere. What if I write new material and sell it to a different company? That's a great question, Mr. Blackcloud, he replied. And we have an answer for that. The current contract doesn't have any clause forcing you to deliver any material to Jeff. The agreement only binds what he uses. If you create something new and don't give it to him, it's completely yours. I burst out laughing, victory surging through me. So I can write for anyone else, and he can't touch it. That's right. Unless he can prove you wrote it to deliver to him, there's no way he can claim ownership of it. And with that, the meeting ended. I left Pearson's office feeling lighter, as if a weight I'd carried for so long was finally lifted. I had spent over $65,000 on this legal consultation, but it was worth every penny. The revenge was coming, slowly, but surely. And nothing would hurt Jeff more than having to pay me for the rest of his life, and not being able to do anything about it. But even with the legal stuff settled, I realized that my anger was still there, simmering like a low burning fire. I was snappy with everyone, friends and strangers alike. Something inside me was crumbling, and I couldn't control it. I knew I needed to change, that if I kept going, I would destroy myself. Eventually, like so many Americans when they reach their breaking point, I went to therapy. Ms. Crenshaw, my therapist, was a sharp woman with a firm but kind approach. She introduced me to cognitive behavioral therapy, a method that helps you reprogram the way you view events. We started with simple exercises, listing the negative thoughts weighing on my mind. For me, the issue was uncontrollable emotional outbursts, not clear-cut thoughts. But gradually, I learned patience. I wrote down what I thought, journaling every random thought, reliving every detail as a story instead of a painful memory. As time passed, I began to understand that my biggest anger wasn't just Monica's betrayal. I was furious at feeling stuck in a cruel joke by fate, that Monica was moving on with her female confidante, while I was left alone. Part of me understood, even empathized with Monica's reasons for going to Jemima, that the relationship happened out of the blue, that she never planned for it. But understanding doesn't equal forgiveness. Monica stabbed me, and then everything she did with Jeff was just the final twist of the knife. The irony was, despite hating her guts for what she did, I still loved her, somewhere in the depths of my soul, and that made it all worse. I could never be with her again, could never trust her, but I couldn't erase the feelings I once had either, and that drove me crazy. Ms. Crenshaw believed that this was the root of all the impatience and rage I was lashing out with. I was punishing the world for a betrayal I had no way to truly avenge. I had tried to get revenge on Jeff by making him pay financially and professionally, but that was indirect retribution, not what I really wanted. I wanted him to feel the pain I felt, but I couldn't really do that. It was a pointless rage, and it was destroying me. And it was partly thanks to Ms. Crenshaw helping me realize that, which allowed me to address it, and also an idea that came up while we were discussing everything. When Ms. Crenshaw asked me to journal about the events, as if I was an outside observer, I thought about creating an imaginary character to do that, and thus Banco was born, an alternate version of me, who would bear the entire story and observe everything from the outside. But the funny thing was, when I started writing about Banco, the monologues, the jokes, and stories just started flowing. I wasn't just retelling the events, I was turning them into sharp stand-up comedy routines. When I finished those pages, I sat back, wondering what to do with everything I'd written. Finally, I sent the manuscript to Maury, and he's the one who gave me the idea that changed my life. "Ben, you could perform these yourself," Maury said, almost excitedly. "With your stand-up background and material this good, why not? Call it therapy, buddy, and I'll get 20%, he said, with a touch of humor, but I knew he was serious. So, I thought about it. I tried out a few monologues in the mirror, and after many sleepless nights, I made a decision. I was going back to stand-up comedy. Of course, it wasn't as easy as it sounded. Even with some experience in the industry, I had to start from the bottom, had to work my way up. There were audiences who raised eyebrows, wondering why I was up there alone and not Jeff, but I persisted. At first, it felt weird. I had to remember how to stand on stage, how to build a story, how to pace the rhythm and pause in the right places to allow for laughter. Then, gradually, the old skills came back, like a muscle you haven't used in a long time. Without Jeff to push me back, I experimented with new things, from how to build a story to how to add in some catch and release moments between the emotionally heavy bits. Over months, I built a full set telling Banco's story, and through that, my own. The stories were painful, sardonic, but also funny and bitter. I called it pathos comedy. On stage, I wasn't just retelling the events, I was making the audience feel them. The quiet moments, the moments of despair, the complex emotions someone might experience when betrayed. Then, after the audience settled, I'd drop a punchline and they'd laugh. It was that which made the set so powerful and engaging. It was a new kind of comedy of deep emotion and bitterness resolved through laughter. Jeff found out about my set sooner than I thought. Maury said when Jeff heard I was doing stand-up on my own, he just chuckled. Good luck to him. He's going to need it. But when Maury sent him a video clip from his phone, Jeff wasn't so nonchalant anymore. He was angry and embarrassed, but he couldn't do anything. According to Maury, if he confronts you, all he'll do is make your story more real, and he never wants that. The press, of course, was quick to connect the dots. As my story started to get attention, they wondered about Jeff and my split from Monica. None of us ever explicitly confirmed anything, but the people in the industry knew. And it affected Jeff's career. His bookings dropped, and TV shows weren't as enthusiastic about him anymore. I slowly built a steady set of gigs. I even had a chance to appear on The Tonight Show. It was a major career moment for me. I wasn't a big stage star like Jeff used to be, but my career was solid with its own bright spots. Bit by bit, I built a life back from the stories that almost tore me apart. Slowly, my revenge wasn't just about Jeff paying the price, it was about finding my own freedom. The anger, bitterness, and hurt, bit by bit, was being released with every performance. I no longer thought of Jeff, Monica, and Jemima with a burning hatred. They were just shadows in the past, supporting characters in my story. Jemima ended up divorcing Jeff, and I found out that the grand affair with Monica had ended a couple of years later. Jemima had gotten into a pretty bad car accident, and it left her with mobility issues requiring a cane. Other issues were reported. People were saying she was also using a colostomy bag. I never really dug deep to find the truth, but you know how gossip is. I never really blamed Monica for being shallow like that. But then again, I didn't really blame her for what she did to me either, so whatever. Maybe there was more to the story. I don't know, and I don't care to know. Jeff, you could say, his career wasn't the same since we parted ways. Without scripts from me, he tried to do things on his own, but it didn't go so well. He went on a short tour to test out new material, and the audience response wasn't good enough to get the funding for a nationwide tour like he hoped. Then he released a best of DVD featuring his greatest hits, of course, including stories I had written. The DVD did okay, and I just sat back and collected my percentage from the sales. He supposedly wanted to end our partnership altogether, but then backed down, maybe because he got the same advice my lawyers did. Doing nothing is sometimes the best option. One day I decided to get under his skin with an income audit of the company. Though it cost me nearly $40,000, we found some unreported DVD income, about $800,000, so both Jeff and I got a nice little windfall. By about 5 years after the split, he found a new writing partner. This guy wasn't bad, talented, but didn't know Jeff like I did. They wrote some decent material for Jeff to perform, but never reached the same level of success we had together. Maybe it was just his time. They made a documentary about Jeff a couple of years ago and reached out to me for an interview. I just said no, thank you firmly. My life had moved on and I had no interest in reliving those days. Of course, I've run into Jeff a few times at award shows and big events. Once I was invited to be a guest on a celebrity game show, and when I arrived, I saw him there. As soon as I saw him, I asked the producer, "What's he doing here?" The response was a sly grin and a surprise. Of course, I walked out immediately, and they tried to sue me but forgot I had a clause in my contract specifically stating that I couldn't be placed in the same emprise, Jeff Klondike. That news traveled fast. Jeff got married again, had a couple more kids, but that marriage didn't last either. As for Monica, I tried my best to not care. However, she pops up in places, doing features and interviews on big shows, making it hard to avoid. She kept a low profile for about 18 months after we broke up. But then she started appearing in Rolling Stone, on podcasts, and in her book. She's a great interviewer, I'll give her that, and her writing always hits a chord. Especially her memoir, which came out in her late 60s. She spilled everything in it, no holds barred, about what she did to me and all the details of the affair. Reading that book was hard. I think she wrote it as a form of self-punishment. She wanted to face her past, to acknowledge what she did. And when the book came out, the press wanted to interview me, but I declined them all. A few years back, I bumped into Monica. I was hosting an award show, and she was there with a big-name actor. I didn't know she was going to be there. I was surprised, but I still managed to professionally host the show. It's just that sometimes my eyes would drift towards her. After the event ended, I went up to the rooftop, found a quiet space for myself, lit a cigar, and sipped on a whiskey. Looking out at the city lights, I suddenly realized someone was behind me. I knew immediately who it was. "Smoking, Ben? That's new. You know it's bad for you," she began. A reprimand after a decade of silence. How fitting. "I think you're not my mother anymore, Monica," I replied, not bothering to turn around. I took a long drag from the cigar, exhaled the smoke, just to emphasize my point. There was a pause, then she answered, "That doesn't mean I don't care, or shouldn't care, Ben." I sighed, continued looking out before turning back, leaning against the railing. She was still beautiful, elegant in a dress that was just modest enough, but also eye-catching. From the dress, the heels, to the pearl necklace I had bought her, everything was perfect. Monica always knew how to make an entrance, and tonight was no exception. As for me, honestly, I had no idea what to say. The past between us was like a Pandora's box, one that would unleash a flood of complex emotions, from anger and hurt to disappointment, the moment it was opened. But she broke the silence, as if wanting to bridge the gap. "You're doing well, Ben. Not too funny, not too serious, just enough to make people laugh and still keep them focused on the event?" "Yeah, it's easier than stand up. Just pick a few jokes, mention a few people in the audience, and you're done," I replied, keeping the conversation as trivial as possible. Honestly, I didn't understand what she wanted. "I've seen you perform several times," she said, stepping closer, leaning against the railing beside me, her eyes locked on mine. "Actually, I think it's 27 times. I snorted. An odd number, and I had no idea how she could count. "It's the only way I could feel close to you," she continued, as if explaining. "I know the stories you tell are about me. I know what I did, and I know you have the right to tell them. But God, Ben, it feels like you're dissecting my pain." I smiled, a slight smirk. "So, I succeeded then, right? Every time I watch you perform, I feel the hurt I caused you. I see it on your face, even when you're on stage, joking, trying to turn everything into humor. But I know you, Ben. I know the sadness hidden behind your smile." She paused, took a deep breath, as if trying to control her emotions. "Every time I come to see you perform, it feels like I'm punishing myself. To remind myself what I did. To see you tell the stories about the pain I inflicted on you. To remind myself of what I did." I didn't know what to say. The ache in her voice made my heart twinge. But then I told myself it was over. It had been over for so long, and I had no room for belated explanations or remorse. "Well, good," I said flatly, "because at least I succeeded in making you understand." She looked at me, almost with disgust. "Is this the man you are now? Is this what I made you into?" Monica asked, her voice laced with bitterness and a touch of accusation. "This hatred doesn't suit you, Ben. It makes you look old." The words stung. I retorted coldly, "If I've become the person you see, then you are the one who made me this way, Monica. You, that scumbag, and my good friend, Jeff." Monica just stared back, her expression sad and wounded. "No, of course, Ben. I'm sorry," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I just really miss you. I'm lonely. Not a day goes by that I don't think about us, about what we had. I wish there was a way back." I stayed silent. This was over. But then, out of curiosity, I asked, "So, how's Jemima?" Monica sighed, gripping her champagne flute. "After we broke up, I lived with Jemima. Things were okay, but they were never the same. She tried her best to take care of me, but part of me was gone. I felt like I was broken, and she was the one who had to take care of me, day after day. It's ironic, isn't it? Instead of us being free to live together, Jemima became the one who had to pick up the pieces of the pain I caused." Monica paused, looking down, as if remembering. I chuckled. "Oh, sorry for putting her through all that." She looked at me, her eyes mournful. "Ben, I'm not blaming you. It's all my fault. I'm just telling you." "And then what happened?" I asked. Monica bit her lip, her gaze drifting as she recounted. "As I started to heal, we had a period of peace, but then Jemima's car accident happened. It changed her completely. She became bitter, cold. Always suspicious, always jealous, for no reason. Monica gave a sad smile. She started taking all her anger out on me like I was the cause of everything. And actually I felt like I was. "Oh, so it's not sick and healthy anymore," I snorted. Monica's lips twitched into a slight frown. "I didn't marry her, Ben. We never even exchanged vows." "Yeah, well, we did, and look where it got us." The words slipped out, almost involuntarily. After all these years, it seemed I still wanted her to hurt. I guess I hadn't let go completely. Monica stayed silent, then she continued. "After the accident, Jemima was seriously injured, and she became a completely different person. Those last years were hard. She hated the world, and I was the only one left to take it. And then she died. Her organs started failing. There was nothing I could do for her." Monica took my cigar, took a puff, and said, "She chose to go. I was with her in her final moments, holding her hand as the light went out in her eyes." Monica's voice was hollow, distant. Then she sighed. "If you have any hate left for Jemima, you're better off forgetting it." She got hers. The air fell silent. A part of me wanted to say, "I'm sorry," but the truth was, I wasn't really sorry. Strange to realize I could be so detached about the death of someone who had once been so close. Monica turned to me, and for the first time she looked me straight in the eyes. "You know, one of her last words was about you. She genuinely regretted her part in destroying our marriage. She never wanted that. She was okay with sharing, even happy to see you happy. But in the end, she realized the cost of that happiness was too high. It was you." Monica turned to me, her voice choked with emotion in the night breeze. "You know, one of Jemima's last words was about you," she said, her eyes fixed on the hazy city lights. "She regretted coming between us. She never wanted that. She was always okay with sharing you. She knew how much you meant to me, and Jemima knew it, too. She knew you didn't deserve all this because of me, and because of her." I stayed silent, not replying. Monica continued, her voice softening, as if she was trying to accept a lost part of herself. "Jemima went to her grave never being able to apologize to you, never having the chance to even remotely say sorry." Monica turned her head towards me, tears welling up in her eyes. "She used to joke that you were the better half of Jeff. Sometimes she'd say, if the three of us had ever been one, things might have been different." Then she laughed sadly, as if realizing the very idea that seemed beautiful had led us all here. She was heartbroken that the love between the two of us could destroy something better. "Just because you and Jemima loved each other, the price to pay was your happiness," she said, her eyes deep with sadness. "And me, I was never worthy of that happiness. I know that. But you didn't deserve to be dragged into this." She paused, no longer looking at me, just gazing into the distance, the city lights reflecting in her conflicted eyes. "But it happened, Ben. I can never fix it. Never bring us back. I did something terrible. And it didn't just destroy you, it destroyed me too. I know that." Monica waited silently, as if hoping for something. Forgiveness, perhaps, or just a sign that we could somehow heal. I knew that's what she wanted, but... As I looked at her, something else became clear. The hatred I had felt before was cold. The raging anger was now an empty sadness. What I felt now wasn't hate. It was just seeing a woman with flaws whose choices had dragged me down, too. Someone I still loved a little, but I no longer saw the point in trying to fix it. There were wounds between us that would never fully heal. Not out of hatred, but because the scar reminded me of everything I had lost by trusting her. "I understand," she said, noticing my expression. Her voice was light like the wind. "I hurt you so much, and no amount of sorry can ever fix it." I still said nothing, and she looked at me, her eyes dimming in the darkness. "You were right from the beginning, Ben. I wasn't worthy of that love. But I just want you to know you should never blame yourself for anything. It was me, all those bad choices, they were mine." She lowered her head, tears rolling down her cheeks. "I just always loved you, and I always will." With that, she quickly turned and walked towards the exit, leaving me alone in the dim lights. That was the last I ever heard from her. The years after that, I slowly rebuilt my life, bit by bit. I worked, I made people laugh on stage, told funny stories for a living. And, just like I joked about before, pretending to be happy eventually became real. But one thing never changed: the suspicion. Monica had left me with a wound that nothing could completely heal. I had other relationships, wonderful women, but I always kept a part of myself back, a space no one could touch, a part to protect myself from getting hurt again. and eventually they all realized it. They left, they needed more than I could give. And I told myself I was okay with that. Maybe because I knew that a piece of me would forever be with Monica in the past. Eventually, when I was much older, I met another woman, someone who had also been through a heartbreak like mine. She, too, kept a distance with commitment, and we both weren't looking for forever love. Instead, we became companions, each living our own lives, but occasionally meeting, sharing joys and sorrows. We understood each other without needing many words, and maybe that's all I really needed. I found peace in my new life, but the scar Monica left would never completely fade. It was there as a reminder of what I'd had and what I'd lost. But maybe, somehow, I learned to smile under the mask. Maybe sometimes clowns smile because if they didn't, all they'd do is cry. And so I kept on living, smiling sometimes.